These are the richest families in Michigan, and their underground secrets are wilder than you think. First, a family that collects a toll on a quarter of everything America trades with Canada, from one bridge they own outright. But that's nothing next to the man who bought so much of downtown Detroit that people renamed the neighborhood after him. And then, a pizza family that secretly paid Rosa Parks rent for over a decade and told absolutely no one. Let's get into the countdown. Number 8. The Moran family. Every single day, more than 10,000 trucks rumble across one bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Canada. Riding on those trucks is roughly a quarter of all the merchandise the United States and Canada trade with each other. Call it $400 million in goods. Every day. And one family collects a toll on all of it. That's the Moran family. And the Ambassador Bridge is theirs. Not leased, not managed. Owned. It's one of the only privately owned international border crossings on the planet, which means while governments negotiate trade deals worth trillions, the Morans just sit at the booth and count. The origin story is the kind of thing you'd roll your eyes at in a movie. The family's Lebanese grandparents first settled in Windsor, right across the water, and their home was torn down to make room for the bridge going up in the late 1920s. Sit with that for a second. The bridge that made this family a fortune got built by demolishing their house. They moved to Detroit, where Matty Moran's father opened a couple of gas stations and started over from nothing. Then in 1979, Matty made his move. He bought out every remaining shareholder of the company that owned the bridge and took the whole thing private, including buying out a young investor named Warren Buffett. Yes, that Warren Buffett. And tucked into the paperwork handed over that day was the original deed to his grandfather's demolished home. Matty gave it to his father. The house the bridge destroyed, back in the family's hands, on the very day they took full control of the bridge. When Matty passed in 2020, his son Matthew took over. The family's worth is estimated somewhere between $1.5 and $2 billion, and they spend it exactly how you'd guess. A fortress of a waterfront estate in Grosse Pointe Shores, near total privacy, zero interest in cameras. They even own the duty-free shops at the foot of the bridge, so they're taking a cut on the retail end too. Every angle covered. Could the government just build a competing bridge and end the monopoly? They tried. And the Morans spent years in court stalling it, appealing, filing, winning delay after delay. Because every year the new bridge doesn't open is another year they own the only door between two countries. One family, one bridge, a couple $1 billion, and at least you can put your finger on exactly where the money comes from. The next family's fortune is stamped on something you've seen 10,000 times and never once pictured as a private dynasty. Number 7. The Ford family. You know this name. It's on trucks, on buildings, on a stadium. What you probably don't know is that the family barely owns the company anymore, and still controls it completely. Here's the trick. The Ford family holds 100% of a special class of stock, the Class B shares, and that stock is wired so the family always elects 40% of the entire board of directors, no matter how few actual shares they hold. Every other shareholder on Earth splits the other 60. In plain terms, no hostile takeover can ever succeed, no CEO gets hired without the family's blessing, and no big strategic turn happens unless a Ford nods along. That's control engineered to survive 100 years. And so far, it has. Henry Ford built the whole thing starting in 1903, and by the time he died in 1947, he'd piled up a fortune worth around $200 billion in today's money. One of the richest human beings who ever lived. The family's combined trust wealth today sits in the low billions, with Bill Ford Jr., Henry's great-grandson, steering the company as executive chairman through its leap into electric vehicles. But honestly, the best Ford story lately is a football team. William Clay Ford Sr. bought the Detroit Lions in 1963 for $4.5 million. When he passed in 2014, the team went to his wife Martha, daughter of tire tycoon Harvey Firestone Jr., because of course 2 of America's great industrial fortunes married straight into each other. Then in 2020, at 94 years old, Martha handed control to her daughter, Sheila Ford Hamp, and Sheila pulled off something nobody had managed in 60 years. She took the most heartbroken franchise in football, a team that was basically a national punchline, and turned it into a real contender. The valuation has climbed past $4 billion on her watch, and her own net worth sits around $2 billion and rising. The homes are exactly what you'd expect from old Michigan money that summers on the coast, a historic mansion in Grosse Pointe, a retreat in the Hamptons, a couple hundred acres on Martha's Vineyard. Understated. If understated runs you $20 million. So how do you outmuscle a family that's been shaping America since the Model T? Simple. You don't build cars at all. You build a selling machine out of a basement in a small Michigan town, and you turn it into one of the most powerful private fortunes in the country. Speaking of turning one basement idea into a fortune, there's a program someone on our team has been curious about called the Billionaire Brain Wave. It's a simple 7-minute audio built around theta brainwave research, the deep focus brain state linked to where big creative ideas come from. You put on headphones once a day, usually with your morning coffee, and that's the whole routine. It's a one-time $39. It comes with bonus guides on money habits and investing basics, and there's a 90-day money-back guarantee. So testing it costs you nothing if it's not for you. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the folks who built that selling machine and the airborne palaces it paid for. Number 6. The Devos family. Most billionaires fly private on a Gulfstream. This family flies private on 2 Boeing 737s. Not chartered. Owned, gutted, and rebuilt into flying living rooms, each one worth somewhere between $80 and $100 million. That's the Devos family, and the fortune underneath those jets came from Amway. Back in 1959, Richard Devos Sr. and his friend J. Van Andel started selling household products through a network of independent distributors out of Ada, Michigan. That model grew into a global giant that's still running today and has moved billions in product. The family's combined worth sits around $5 billion, managed through a private investment office called the WinQuest Group. And they spend it loudly. Add to those 2 737s a pair of Gulfstream G550s and a fleet of Bombardier Challengers, and the family basically operates its own regional airline. There was a 163-foot super yacht called Legacy, valued around $40 million, with $4 million a year just in running costs, before they sold it in 2022. Home base is a heavily secured estate on Lake Macatawa in Holland, Michigan, the kind of place you can spot from the water and never get within a mile of. But the Devos money isn't only parked in toys. A lot of it got poured into West Michigan concrete. In Grand Rapids, they funded the Devos Place Convention Center, the Helen Devos Children's Hospital, and the Grand Rapids Public Museum. When people say a family built a city's civic core, they usually mean somebody wrote a check for a plaque. The Devos family wrote enough checks to build the actual buildings, and they collect teams the way other people collect art. The family owns the Orlando Magic in the NBA outright and holds a minority stake in the Chicago Cubs. So on any given night, they might be watching a game they partly own from a suite, having flown in on a jet the size of a commercial airliner. 2 Boeing 737s and a super yacht sounds like the ceiling for expensive obsessions. It isn't. The man at number 5 keeps 75 of his obsessions locked inside a warehouse he refuses to let anyone photograph. Number 5. The Penske family. When this man sold his Michigan mansion a few years back, one detail made buyers do a double take. The house belonging to one of the most car-obsessed billionaires alive had a garage for exactly 2 cars. 2. Here's why. Somewhere outside Detroit, in an unmarked, heavily secured warehouse that almost nobody gets to see, Roger Penske keeps 75 hand-picked vehicles. Not 75 random cars. 75 specific ones, including a Ferrari FXX prototype that was never even meant to touch a public road. The mansion only needed 2 spots. The real collection lives somewhere else entirely. They call Penske the captain, and he earned the fortune the slow way. He raced professionally in the early 60s, then borrowed money from his father to buy a single Chevrolet dealership in Philadelphia. That one dealership grew into the Penske Automotive Group, a Fortune 500 company and the second largest auto retailer in the entire United States. The family's worth lands somewhere between $6 and $8 billion. But cars are only half the story. Penske owns Team Penske, the most successful operation in the history of the Indianapolis 500, with a record 20 wins. He owns the IndyCar series itself. And he owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the most famous oval in the world. Most people dream of winning that race once in their lives. Penske went ahead and bought the whole championship, plus the track it runs on. His fingerprints are all over Michigan too, and unlike a lot of the names here, he actually shows his face. He chaired Detroit's Super Bowl host committee in 2006 and helped clean up the city's municipal vehicle fleets after its bankruptcy. When Michigan needs a steady, competent hand in public, Penske tends to be the one who turns up. And the man runs everything to a standard that borders on obsessive. His race shops and dealerships are kept so clean and so orderly, they'd embarrass a hospital. His kids work in the business, but there are no free rides in this family. You earn the name before you get to carry it. You could walk into any Penske dealership and see, right there in front of you, exactly how the man made his money. Number 4 made their billions one 2-for-1 pizza at a time. And the single kindest thing any of them ever did, they hid from the entire world for more than 10 years. Number 4. The Ilitch family. In 1959, a young couple emptied their life savings to open one pizza shop in Garden City, Michigan. Today, their family owns 2 major league sports teams, a casino, a historic theater, and a whole slice of downtown Detroit. That's the Ilitch family, and the shop was the very first Little Caesars. Mike and Marion Ilitch grew it slowly, then all at once. That pizza, 2-for-1 deal became one of the most recognizable ad lines in fast food history. Little Caesars now does more than $5 billion in sales a year. Marion's own net worth today lands somewhere between $5 and $8 billion, which makes her one of the wealthiest women in America. From that one shop, they built something that basically defines how Detroit sees itself. They own the Red Wings in the NHL and the Tigers in Major League Baseball. They own the Motor City Casino Hotel and the beautiful old Fox Theater. And they anchored a massive redevelopment of downtown around the $860 million Little Caesars Arena. But the story that tells you who this family actually is has nothing to do with pizza or arenas. In 1994, Rosa Parks, was attacked and robbed inside her own Detroit home. The whole city was shaken. And quietly, with no announcement at all, Mike Ilitch reached out and offered to cover her rent, moving her into a safe, secure building. He paid it every single month for more than a decade until she passed in 2005. No press release, no photo op. Nobody found out until years after both of them were gone. He just did it and said nothing. There's a smaller story that explains the other half of this family. Early on, Marion used to stop Mike from handing out free pizzas to people who couldn't pay. Not because she was cold, but because she understood that if the business died, there'd be nothing left to give anyone. His soft heart, her hard math. That combination is what built the whole empire. Mike passed in 2017. Marion, now in her 90s, lives quietly out in Oakland County, and their son Christopher runs the day-to-day. The pizza still sells. The city still leans on the family that fed it. If the Ilitches got rich feeding a city and gave in total silence, number 3 got rich fixing the human body. And then gave so loudly they ended up with their name on a medical school, a college, and, believe it or not, a monkey. Number 3. The Stryker family. A surgeon in Kalamazoo got so fed up with the tools he had to work with that he started inventing his own. That little oscillating saw that removes a plaster cast without cutting your skin? That was him. A turning frame to move bedridden patients safely? Also him. His name was Dr. Homer Stryker, and in 1941 he turned his inventions into the Stryker Corporation. Today that company pulls in more than $20 billion a year as one of the biggest medical device makers in the world. The fortune now sits with his grandchildren, Rhonda, John, and Pat Stryker, worth a combined $16 billion or so. And what they do with it is where it gets interesting. Rhonda spent years as a special education teacher in Kalamazoo public schools before joining the company's board. Then she started giving $100 million to Western Michigan University to launch a medical school named after her grandfather, $30 million to Spelman College, the historically black women's college in Atlanta, and in 2024, another $100 million to Spelman, the single largest gift from living donors to any historically black college or university in American history. A former special ed teacher wrote that check. Let that sink in. Her brother John is a trained architect who spends his time and money preserving historic buildings across Michigan and funding conservation work around the globe. His foundation has handed out more than $700 million, a big chunk of it aimed at protecting great apes. And that conservation work led to maybe the strangest honor on this entire list. Scientists discovered a brand new species of snub-nosed monkey deep in the forests of Myanmar and named it Rhinopithecus strickeri, after John. So there is a man in Kalamazoo, Michigan, walking around with a monkey named after him in Southeast Asia. Consider that your reminder that money, spent well, ends up in genuinely unpredictable places. The strikers ended up with their name on a medical school, a college, and a primate. Number 2 is worth even more than they are, around $21 billion. And yet most people outside the Midwest couldn't name them if you paid them. They quietly invented something you walk into almost every week. Number 2, the Mayer family. This family invented the thing you now think of as a totally normal superstore. Groceries on one side, everything else on earth on the other, all under one enormous roof. And they built it decades before Walmart made that idea famous. Outside the Midwest, almost nobody knows the name. It's the Mayer family, and it started at the worst possible moment. In 1934, right in the teeth of the Great Depression, a Dutch immigrant barber named Hendrik Mayer opened a small grocery store in Greenville, Michigan, just to keep his own family fed. Decades later, in the 1960s, the Mayers put groceries and general merchandise together into a single giant store, the hypermarket, years before the big national chains figured out the same trick. Today, the family runs more than 500 supercenters, pulling in an estimated $22 billion a year, which makes them one of the largest private companies in the entire country. Their combined net worth sits around $21 billion, and a stunning amount of it went straight back into Grand Rapids. The Frederick Mayer Gardens and Sculpture Park draws more than 700,000 visitors a year. The Doug Mayer Medical Innovation Building on the city's Medical Mile is pushing cancer research forward at real scale. This isn't charity gala money. This is city-shaping money. What makes this family unusual, though, is how honest one of them decided to be. Doug Mayer, a former co-CEO, has been remarkably open that owning beautiful homes and being able to buy anything did nothing for the clinical depression he was living with. In one brutal week in 2011, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, finalized a divorce, and lost his father. He came out the other side, cut alcohol entirely, dropped 60 pounds, and now talks publicly about mental health in a way you almost never hear from someone at his level of wealth. And the family stays grounded in a very specific way. The kids are expected to pull actual shifts in the warehouses and stores starting young, around age 12. Doesn't matter how many billions are sitting in the trust. In this family, you learn the business from the floor up. So that's the family quietly running the Midwest from the aisles. But there is one man in Michigan who didn't stop at building a business inside a city. He went and bought the city itself, wired its streets with his own private cameras, and watched people rename an entire district after him. Number 1. The Gilbert family. And it is not close. There's a stretch of downtown Detroit that locals stopped calling by its real name years ago. They just call it Gilbertville, after the man who bought most of it. Dan Gilbert started with a mortgage company. In 1985, he co-founded Rock Financial out of Metro Detroit. It became Quicken Loans, which became Rocket Mortgage, which became the largest retail mortgage lender in the United States. Through his companies and investments, his personal net worth sits somewhere between $23 and $33 billion depending on the quarter, which makes him, by a wide margin, the richest person on this entire list. But the number that really explains his grip on Michigan is a different one. $5.6 billion. That's how much Gilbert, through his real estate arm, Bedrock, has sunk into downtown Detroit. More than 100 major buildings, bought, gutted, rebuilt, and filled with tens of thousands of workers. He didn't invest in the neighborhood. He became the neighborhood. That's why the nickname stuck. No other word really fits. And here's the part that earns this video, its title. The security across Gilbert's downtown properties reportedly runs on a private surveillance network so extensive that it rivals what the city's own police department operates. In the blocks he controls, a private company is effectively watching the streets. Whatever you make of that, it's a real on-the-ground version of one family privatizing a piece of a city's safety. He also co-founded StockX, the sneaker and streetwear marketplace now worth billions, and he owns the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA. And he's got a rival straight out of a movie, fellow Detroit area billionaire Matt Ishbia, who runs a competing mortgage giant and, in 2021, told brokers all over America they had to pick a side. Him or Rocket. It set off lawsuits and the kind of public trash talk the buttoned-up finance world almost never sees. Then Ishbia went and bought the Phoenix Suns, putting two Michigan mortgage billionaires head-to-head as NBA owners in two different cities. Underneath all of it, Gilbert's story is really about survival. In 2019, he suffered a major stroke and needed emergency brain surgery and months of rehab to fight his way back. And his family carried something far heavier. His oldest son, Nick, lived with the genetic disease neurofibromatosis his whole life and passed away in 2023 at just 26. The family has poured tens of millions into the search for a cure, and a research institute in Detroit now carries Nick's name. Dan Gilbert didn't only build a fortune in Michigan, he rebuilt a city and turned his hardest loss into the thing he keeps fighting for. So here's the thread running through all 8 of these families. In Michigan, the real power players didn't just get rich. They took ownership of the things everyone else only uses. The bridge you drive across, the mortgage on your house, the team you cheer for on Sunday, the actual streets downtown. That's a different animal than a fat bank balance. That's infrastructure. So which one got you? The family collecting a toll on a quarter of America's trade with Canada? The pizza couple who paid Rosa Parks' rent in total silence for a decade? Or the man who bought so much of Detroit they renamed it after him? Drop it in the comments. I read them. And if you want to know who really runs the next state we're covering, because trust me, it's even wilder, subscribe to Global Status and stick around. See you in the next one.